Okay, so have you heard about this Operation Aurora thing? It sounds kind of like, some kind of superhero movie title or something,
Well, think
right?
right, right.
But this is like real life and it's causing like a whole thing. It's a whole big thing.
Yeah.
We are diving deep into what is it? A recent Trump campaign speech.
Okay.
And let me tell you, he was not holding back on this one.
Oh, really?
Oh, no, not at all.
Wow. And I know we were talking about this a little beforehand, but this is something else I'm hearing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So, like we said, the article we're looking at today, it doesn't really beat around the bush. It just comes right out and says it. Like, the title is actually Trump Goes Dark MAGA and Calls Harris Threat to Democracy.
Hmm. Dark MAGA. That's interesting. That's a new one.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I see it popping up more and more, but every time it's just like, what is that? What did that even mean?
I know, right?
Like, what are we even talking about here?
Exactly.
Seems very, I don't know.
Loaded.
Yeah, there you go.
Very loaded term, for sure.
Yeah, and what I think is really kind of fascinating about this whole thing is how this speech uses that kind of like really intense language. Like we've seen this before from him, but this is like, turned up to 11.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and the article, it actually calls it out, straight up uses the word, what is it, exaggerations?
Okay.
But it's the actual, like, claims themselves that are really, really something.
Right, and even that word right there,
Mhm.
exaggerations, already kind of tips their hand a little more.
Oh, yeah.
Like right from the beginning, it's like they're waving a little flag saying, "Hold on a second here. Let's unpack this a little."
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
Like, okay, so he calls Kamala Harris a threat to democracy,
Okay.
and he is blaming her time as, you know, border czar,
Right.
which is basically, her role in like figuring out how to address all of the reasons why people are migrating, which is a whole other can of worms.
Oh yeah, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
But he's like, no, it's her fault. She was too easy on border security, and now there's more crime because of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's fascinating because it's like you almost never hear that coming from that side, right? Like
Yeah.
usually that's kind of the line that we hear from Democrats when they're talking about Trump, right?
Right.
Not the other way around.
Yeah. It's wild, right? Total flipping of the script.
Total flipping of the script.
And it gets more intense. Like if you thought that was intense, buckle up because he unveils this whole plan. He calls it Operation Aurora.
Oh wow.
And it's supposed to like deport undocumented immigrants on just a massive, massive scale.
Wow.
And he's specifically naming Venezuelan gang members. And he does not hold back. Like, I mean, he's calling them animals and stone cold killers.
Wow.
And says this is going to be the biggest deportation operation like ever.
Wow. And this is another place where I feel like the article is really trying to like, nudge us in a certain direction.
Okay.
Because they use the word hyperbolic, right? And it's like Trump's painting this picture. Like Aurora is just completely overrun with violence. And I mean, he's saying things like people are just bursting into buildings with AK-47s. And then like immediately in the article, they're like, well, hold on. Aurora's own Republican mayor is saying that's really not the case.
Yeah, like it's not as widespread as Trump is making it out to be.
She's
Such a reality check, you know what I mean?
Right.
Really makes you think about like, okay, what is the actual impact of this type of rhetoric?
Yeah.
Especially in a place like Aurora, like this isn't just some abstract concept. These are real people's lives.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. In the article, even like they even quote some local politicians who are really worried now about the safety of migrants after hearing this speech.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, yeah. So it's not just about the words themselves, right? It's about what those words can do, what they might lead to.
Yeah, totally. And it's like it gets even more like I don't know, more complicated or complex when you think about like, okay, the historical stuff, right?
Right.
Like the history of this country. He's saying he wants to use this law from like 1798 to do this, to make this whole mass deportation happen.
Wow.
And like, okay, we don't have time to go like full history lesson or legal scholar on this, but this law, it was about expelling foreign nationals who were considered dangerous during wartime.
Right.
Like back in the day. And it makes you wonder, like, is that even something, like, is that even possible to do today? Like, could you even, even beyond that, I mean, America has this whole complicated history with large-scale deportations, right?
Yeah.
And they often have really, really devastating consequences.
Totally, totally. And, speech like this, it's not surprising, but it got people talking.
Oh, I bet.
Big time.
Yeah.
The article mentions that, like, Sarah Palin was there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like cheering him on, so...
Right. So it's like, rallying the base kind of thing.
Totally, totally, yeah. And
Mhm.
then, of course, on the other side, you have Colorado Democrats who are very quick to condemn the speech, like completely condemned it.
And I bet the language they used is just as interesting in a way,
Oh, yeah.
Like what are they saying?
Right. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. It's like they're both using these really, really strong words, right?
Yeah.
So, like, Trump, he's calling it a reign of terror, under Harris.
Okay.
And then, his critics are saying, like, no, you're the one stirring up fear and disinformation.
Yeah, and it's just fascinating how it becomes this like battle of narratives almost,
Yes.
where each side is using these really emotionally loaded words
Totally.
to try to kind of control the story.
Yes, that is such a good point. It's like we're almost looking at two completely different versions of reality here.
It really
Like,
is.
depending on who you listen to and what you read and what you watch,
Yeah.
it's kind of scary in a way, how powerful language is
Right?
and how it can be used.
It's incredibly powerful.
So I don't know what happens next. Who even knows at this point? But
What happens in Aurora? I mean,
yeah, like what happens in Aurora? How does this affect the actual people who live there?
right.
Like, that's what I want to know.
Yeah, I think that's the most important question.
It is. We could sit here and we could analyze the speech all day long, but
Yeah.
what does it mean for them?
Exactly. Yeah, and how is the media going to cover this? Are
Yeah.
they going to be responsible? Are they going to, fall into these traps?
Are they going to make it worse? Are they going to,
Right.
add fuel to the fire? Who knows?
Exactly. And it's really, I think this is something, you know, listeners, if you take anything away from this,
Yeah.
it's like really pay attention to the language that's being used, right?
Yes.
Because that'll tell you a lot.
Totally.
It's not just what they're saying, it's how they're saying it.
Totally. And think about those historical parallels, too.
Oh, yeah.
Because those are so important for context, right?
Absolutely. You can't ignore those.
You can't. And then, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like we said, what is the actual real world impact of this? This is just the beginning, really.
Yeah, I mean, this deep dive, it's just scratching the surface, you know what I mean? This is something to keep an eye on. This is far from over.
Yeah. I have a feeling this is going to be a big deal
Oh, I think so too.
for a while.
Yeah, so stay informed, everybody.
Stay informed, pay attention, and we'll keep an eye on it too. We'll definitely be back to talk about this again.
Absolutely.
All right, thanks for listening, everybody.